Hello, Heather.
Hi, Brittany.
Why don't we chat a little bit and get to know a few things about each other we don't know yet, baby?
Okay, we talk all morning. We might as
We
well do it
do.
here.
Well, take me back to the beginning. Tell me who you are.
All right. Well, so I actually am an East Tennessee girl, but a lot of people don't know I was actually born in Minot, North Dakota. So when I met Rebecca Sweet, she was the only for other person I ever met
Yeah.
from North Dakota, which was really fun. So my family is from Pennsylvania, and my dad was in the military. So we moved around a lot in my early childhood. So I lived in Lexington, Kentucky
Ooh,
as well. I guess we didn't know we had that in
yeah.
common. But then we moved here when I was in second grade, and I started at Mount Olive Elementary before my family moved out to Carnes. So from third grade on, I grew up in the Carnes area. So I'm from this area. And then, after graduating, I was like, not really sure what I wanted to do, but I knew that I loved being here in Knoxville. So I went to the University of
Yeah.
Tennessee and majored in journalism, and then went on into this wonderful world of journalism.
So, how did you know, though, that you wanted to get into journalism?
Well, I didn't actually know. So I don't have a great story like so many people that when I was a kid, I used to sit at the kitchen counter and,
Yeah.
do a newscast. But I knew that I always loved current events. And a
Mm.
lot of really pivotal things happen in high school and college, like 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina. And I was always so interested, especially when those things happened. Like I was just glued to the TV and
Mm.
how those events were being covered. I remember my parents watching the news. This is what we did as a family at night. We watched Robin Wilhoit when I was
Yeah.
younger. And so it was just kind of part of our daily lives. And I got to UT and I was, meeting so many people. And a girl across the hall said to me, I'm majoring in journalism. And when she said that, I stopped for a minute and thought, I've really never considered that. And so I started taking some classes and just, of course, instantly fell in love. I've always loved storytelling, and it just seemed like a good fit.
So here you are in East Tennessee, back home. But, maybe that's the easy answer about why you're here, but maybe not, because we know in this industry that we can kind of go anywhere and
That's
we have
right.
been everywhere. So why are you here now?
Well, when I was in college here, I actually interned here at Channel 10. And so that really kind of set me off on the right foot. But back then, we didn't hire people right out of college.
Hmm.
And so a lot has changed in our industry in the last 20 years. So they said, go out, get your first job, get a second job, maybe consider coming home.
Yeah.
So I started sending out my resume tapes. They were VHS tapes back then.
Oh, I
So
remember.
I sent a bunch out, and the first call I got was from Panama City, Florida.
Mm.
And, if you're from this area, you probably vacation in that area. And so I thought, why not? Maybe I'll start my career at the beach. So I went to Panama City and was there for a couple of years. And, just like everybody else, ready to move up to a bigger market, and decided to apply to an opening for a statewide cable station in Charlotte, North Carolina. And that was a really big transition, it felt like, going from such a small
Mm.
town to kind of what felt like the big leagues at that time. Cable news was still pretty new. And so I was a one-man band. I anchored on the weekends. And, I kind of got my feet wet with that in Panama City, because when you were the anchor, you were also the reporter
Yeah.
and the assignment editor, and I was the producer of the shows. And so you kind of do it all. So spent about 5 years in Charlotte, and it was really eye opening. I got to cover a lot in education, and really fell in love with the state. And when the time came to start thinking about, what might I want to do next, I had been anchoring and really just kind of missed reporting. So I took a job in Raleigh, North Carolina, not too far away, where I was anchoring on the weekends and I was reporting during the week. And I loved it. I mean, it was getting to do state politics, and we did a lot of traveling there. So I covered several Final Fours, because,
Mm.
it's not all about one school sport there. It's about
Yeah.
many. And there's, you got Duke, and you've got NC State, and you got Chapel Hill. So that kind of opened my eyes to another world of sports in North Carolina. I covered a lot of that. I got to cover the Country Music Awards in Nashville, which was awesome. I got to meet Fred Foster, who discovered Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of cool to see how these worlds of mine were colliding growing up here in East Tennessee, and some of the stories I was getting to cover in Charlotte. So, I loved my time there, but kind of like you, had been gone for 13 years. And my husband, who actually is also from here, we had our first child, and, we were thinking long term, like, where do we want to be?
Mm.
We loved it there, but we felt like East Tennessee was calling us home. So here I came back to Channel 10 and said, "Hi, remember me? I used to be an intern here. I'd love to come back home." And lucky for me, they created an opening, and it's just been amazing to be back home after all of these years.
And we kind of talked about this as well, how much it changed when I was gone for that long.
Yes,
I imagine so much it changed for you,
so
but
much.
coming back here, you got to see it with a new perspective. I'm sure
Mhm.
growing up here, you thought about it a certain way, coming back as an adult, having worked other places. So what do you love about it now?
Oh yeah, I mean it's changed dramatically. When I grew up in Carnes, Hardin Valley didn't exist.
Yeah.
That was just all cow pastures out by Pellissippi State.
Yeah.
So just seeing how that transformed, and then the downtown area. I went to UT, and we spent a lot of time on the Strip, which,
Yeah.
as you know, has changed dramatically. Nobody even went downtown, and so to come back and re-explore it. I live in a different part of town than where I grew up. That's been really fun. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on the lake when I lived here first time around, and that's really been something that we've enjoyed as a family since I've been back. So exploring that, exploring downtown, seeing how businesses have changed, and people are moving to this area. I mean, it's been incredible to see the transformation that Knoxville's undergone.
And so when people do come to visit you, where do you take them?
Well, kind of like you, I always take them downtown.
Yeah.
I mean, I love our downtown. Market Square is so unique. Gay Street, I love local business. It's really
Yeah.
something that I think we showcase well downtown. I love shopping local. So I love to take people there. The Smoky Mountains, I mean, how could you not? I love to take people on a hike if they're outdoorsy. And I love Maryville. We've got all these great towns surrounding Knoxville. I kind of take them all over. Dollywood. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
how could you not go to Dollywood?
Right.
It's a great place.
And let's talk about going back to journalism and your career. Of course, we've covered so many stories
Yeah.
over the years. Is there one that stands out that affected you most personally?
Well, kind of like you said, it's hard when you've been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing this for 20 years this year. And so you really cover all kinds of stories. And I think the hardest part of what we do is having to talk to people and some of their worst moments. And so, it always, I never take it for granted that when I've had to go to somebody in a time that is not so fortunate for them, that they feel like they can open up and share their stories. I've covered presidential visits, and I've covered, tornadoes. People have, their homes have been demolished. I've covered, exciting sports events. Those things are great. But I think if I could think about the most recent one, because like you said, it kind of changes depending on the day. But about a year ago, this one I feel like really pulled at my heartstrings. I met a boy. His name is Connor Hurst. He's 16 years old. He was 16 when he had a stroke. And it happened in the middle of the night. It was really unexplained, but it left him paralyzed. And his mom and I went to grade school together, but we had lost touch after all these years. And, social media is a wonderful way to keep up with each other. And she's always somebody who's been kind of an acquaintance. And years earlier, I'd seen her post about her son and how this had happened. And, I just feel like I was keeping up some through social media, and it was a struggle for them. And one day I get a message from her, and she was like, "Heather, I know we haven't talked in a long time, but I just really feel like I want to raise awareness that there's just not treatment for people in this area who suffer things like strokes." She'd been having a really hard time finding doctors. They'd have to travel to Chattanooga. And so I thought, I think this is a good opportunity to just let people know that this is happening for people in our area. And how can we talk about Connor's story and also figure out why this is happening? So I went to her house. I met her son, and he'd been living downstairs in their living room for all this time because he couldn't get back up to his room. There was no way for him to get up there. So we profiled him, and somebody saw Connor's story, and they were really touched by this one line about how he hadn't been back up to his bedroom in 2 years. And he owned a local elevator business. And so he reached out and said, "I want to help give Connor a way to get to his room." And so he went to his home. He partnered with a children's charity here, and they put an entire elevator in this home. And we were there when Connor got to go up to his room for the first time, and it was totally free to the family.
Oh, yeah.
And that was just, it seems like a small thing, but to this family, it was a huge moment. And I think it just speaks to the impact that our stories can have when people feel I guess, motivated to do something
Yeah.
by what they have seen. And we get to be just a small part of that.
I mean, that's the best part of our
Yeah.
job, right? Shining a light on something and then having someone be so moved by it, they'll do something like
Yes. It's
that.
incredible.
Well, talking about how much we love the job, if you couldn't do this job, though, what would you do?
It's hard to imagine because we've been doing it for so long.
Exactly.
I have thought about that a lot, and I'm kind of like, I would love to just take a vacation
Yes.
every day. There was a point in time when we had our first child that I looked at my husband and said, maybe we should get an Airstream and just be one of those families that we just, ride off into the sunset and we just like live wherever. And, he was not on board with
No.
that. So here we came back to Tennessee. But I love the idea of that. I love the idea of maybe it's a travel agent. I love to explore places, and I love to meet new people. We meet new people every day.
Yep.
Everyone's got a story. Why not do it in a different place?
Well, how about this? What inspires you not only in this business, but in life? Or are there people who do that for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we, as you know, have had so many mentors that you encounter in this business. And I've had one. I think I've been fortunate to have one in pretty much every station that I've worked for. I mean, honestly, if I could think back to the person who really has inspired most of my career, it would be Robin Wilhoit.
Mm-hmm.
And, she was here when I interned. And there is a time in a young journalist's life where you think, I want to be on network television. I want to go to the Today Show. I want to be, a correspondent. And I think that everyone's journey is different. But for me, it always felt like I want to be like Robin. I don't know if that's in East Tennessee, but that's what I aspired to be. And so, coming back here and getting to work with Robin and see how she leads the newsroom, see how she cares about this community, and see how she connects with people, it's always set the tone for the kind of person that I want to be in the community that I live in. How lucky are we that we get to work with Robin every day?
I mean, they don't call her the franchise for
That's
nothing.
right. That's
I mean, she's the best.
She's the GOAT.
She is the GOAT. All right, last question here. Little curveball. You don't know what this question is going to be. But I asked actually the same question of Katie. Is there a moment where you just royally messed up, made a mistake, either a bad mistake or a funny one that taught you, what, if we can get through this in life, we can get through anything because we all make mistakes on TV. And it's a hard question. You may not have one.
I mean, I would have to go back through the archives because, like there are times where you're right in the middle of a sentence and you're like, wait, what was I saying? I don't know if there's like one specific thing, but we have all had those live on-air experiences where you're like, that didn't quite go how I thought it would go.
But I think it makes us better. All right, you can answer that one off camera, I guess. All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thanks, Brittany.